If home prices are up 21%, why are so many home sellers dropping the price? And is the real estate market going to crash? This is Robert C. Baker, and thank you for joining me. Now, be sure to stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you a tip on how you can find home price reductions in your neighborhood. Just this past week, the March 2022 Case-Shiller Home Price Index report came out, and boy, it's a doozy. The report notes nearly a 21% increase in national home prices. Now, Case-Shiller really is a number of indices. The 10-city index rose 19.5%, while the 20-city index rose 21.2% year over year. For both the national and the 20-city indices, that's the highest increase in home prices in 35 years. Now keep in mind that Case-Shiller is a rolling average over a 3-month period, so the March 2022 index reflects the first quarter of this year. Now that's important to remember. Why? Well, because the U.S. Federal Reserve did not begin increasing interest rates until March 4th, so the March 2022 Case-Shiller index does not fully show the impact that rising interest rates are going to have on the real estate market in general, and specifically on buyer and seller sentiment. Then again, Case-Shiller is not the only index showing skyrocketing price increases. According to the FHA's House Price Index, house prices rose 18.7% from the first quarter of 2021 to the first quarter of 2022. If you can believe it, house prices were up 4.6% compared to the fourth quarter of 2021. Of course, a primary contributor to rising home prices is the fact that there are so few homes to buy. There simply are not enough homes. Freddie Mac notes that as of the fourth quarter of 2020, the U.S. had a housing supply deficit of 3.8 million units. That's hard to fathom. Can you believe that we're nearly 4 million homes short of where we need to be? Mention in the comments below what you would have guessed the housing deficit is. And by the way, here are some reasons for that deficit. First, since the 1980s, there's been a virtual halt of producing entry-level homes defined as 1,400 square feet and smaller. Now, there's been an uptick recently in the construction of entry-level and even tiny homes, but not enough to cover what we need. Second, there was the housing crisis and the Great Recession of 08-09. That's when a glut of new housing combined with less than sterling lending practices led to the housing crisis. A lot of builders were burned and quite a few got out of the business. Third, enter COVID-19 causing a shortage of workers, supply chain issues, and rising costs. Fourth, burdensome zoning laws and skyrocketing building costs made it hard for buyers to afford new housing, sold at a price that builders could afford to build them. And finally, baby boomers and now Gen Xers are choosing to live in their own homes as long as they can, as opposed to moving into smaller homes or apartments, assisted living, or senior facilities. These generations are aging in place. Speaking of rising interest rates, how are they influencing the behavior of sellers and buyers? CNBC and other outlets report that there's been a jump in home listings the past couple of weeks due to sellers' fear of missing out. Sharply higher mortgage rates have caused a sudden pullback in home sales, and now sellers are rushing to get in before the red-hot market cools off dramatically. On May 19, ScoreSense reported that in a recent survey, 30% of folks planning to buy a home this year changed their minds due to the economy or their personal budgets, and that included 7% whose credit scores are not high enough to qualify for a loan. Indeed, in an earlier piece, respondents listed inflation, credit score, personal budget, and high interest rates as the top reasons for delaying a purchase, while affordability and overpaying for a home were also mentioned. Rising interest rates and other economic factors have caused a housing cool-down, or what Fortune calls the Great Deceleration. Now let's be clear, we're not talking about a national housing market collapse or a huge wave of steep price decreases or devaluation of assets, but rather a slowdown in the housing market. Fortune notes the astronomical increase in home prices we've experienced over the past 2 years, a pandemic housing boom as it calls it, which is the largest 2-year jump in home prices since the jump before the 08-09 housing crisis, which is probably why you see a lot of clickbaity videos predicting a housing crash this year or next. But that's unlikely to happen. As you already know from watching this channel, super low mortgage interest rates coupled with super low inventory was the recipe for skyrocketing prices the past 2 years. But now things are slowing down. What's causing the Great Deceleration? 3 things. First, the Federal Reserve is applying the brakes by putting upward pressure on mortgage interest rates. Second, the overheated market is making it clear, at least according to economists, that the housing market is overvalued. And third, the U.S. economy is losing steam. So we're going to see a slowdown not only in home price acceleration, but we're also going to see an increase in unemployment. Back to sellers. The days of super aggressive pricing, of listing agents telling their sellers, name any price and you'll get it, of buyers making offers $10, $20, $50, $100,000, not only over listing price but over appraised value, are drawing to a close. But simply, home sellers are getting the economic picture and they're dropping the price. Redfin finds this especially to be the case in places they call migration hotspots. Migration hotspots are places where there's been a large influx of new residents, People fleeing states and locations with high property taxes, high state income taxes, and so on, looking for a place to live where they can find relief. Notes Redfin chief economist Daryl Fairweather, many places like Boise or Sacramento that saw a surge in migrations and a sharp increase in home prices over the past 2 years have now seen an abrupt drop-off in demand, leading sellers to drop their prices with increasing frequency. In fact, in April, in 7 of the 10 most popular migration destinations, 20% of home sellers dropped their price. Let's check out those migration hotspots. Boise comes into the top with a 40.8% drop in home prices, followed by Cape Coral, Florida at 32.5%. Just take a look at how much those prices have changed in Cape Coral in the past 2 years. And in third place is New Orleans, coming in with a 31.6% price drop. And looking at Tennessee, Memphis comes in with a 16.3% drop, Nashville at 14.1%, and Knoxville at 13.1%. While Redfin didn't provide any data on the greater Chattanooga area, we are able to glean some data points from the local MLS. So, for example, we know that the median home price was $302,500 in April, and we also know that over the past 2 years, that home prices in April have increased 40%. The question, of course, is what percentage of homes had a price reduction in April of this year? Here's that tip. Go to Realtor.com and plug in your city or county. Here I'm plugging in Hamilton County, Tennessee, because that's where Chattanooga is located, and you can find homes, active listings of homes, that have had price reductions. So this gives me an initial figure of 2018 homes, but I'm still not satisfied. I want to X out all multifamily homes. I'm only interested in single family, so I click that button, click Done, and that revises the number to 1308. Still not satisfied, I go to the Listing Status tab, and I click Hide Pending and Contingent because I'm only interested in active listings. So how many active listings, according to Realtor.com, on this day? 439. Well, that's important to know because the next thing I want to do is find out how many have had a price reduction. Clicking that, click Done. And I'm going to see the number of how many price reductions out of 439, and that's 91 homes. 91 homes out of 439 homes. Now, fair warning, this is not super scientific, but just pulling some data from Realtor.com, I came up with this. Realtor.com, on the date that I ran this, showed a range of price reductions in Hamilton County, where Chattanooga is situated, from 1 to 11%, or between $5,000 and $150,000. Now, bear in mind that $150,000 drop is, of course, for a multi-million-dollar property. The majority of price reductions averaged about 2%. The mode, for you math geeks out there, the most frequent price reduction was $10,000, followed by $5,000 price reductions. So this means that local home sellers who are interested in selling their homes before the end of this current market cycle are taking the economic hint and reducing their prices accordingly. But here's that question again. Because we're seeing price drops in the current real estate market, does that mean that the market's going to crash? Not likely, at least under current market conditions. Again, from a piece in Fortune, CoreLogic recognizes that homes in the greater Chattanooga area are overvalued, but the chance of a general home price drop are very low. Why is that? Again, supply and demand. We're short nearly 4 million homes nationally. As the current market decelerates, sellers will continue to list their properties for sale, and buyers will continue to make offers, but both sellers and buyers will have to pay more attention to appraised value. Want to know if Chattanooga homes are affordable? Watch this video next.